Right. For me, being a Zimbabwean means my heritage, the things which make me Zimbabwean, and by this I'm talking about the food, the language, the culture, the country culture, the corporate culture. Zimbabwe being a landlocked countries, it borders with other countries like Zambia, Botswana, Mozambique, South Africa. Then how is a Zimbabwean different from a Mozambican? Because they say the same, the same land, they say the same soil. So for me, I am talking, I think being a Zimbabwean means the culture, like I said, the fact that I can speak the languages. I think for me that's what makes me a Zimbabwean. You could argue and say that can one still be a Zimbabwean when they are living, say, in America or in England, far afield from the Zimbabwean soil. Again, this is the bit that, for me, being a Zimbabwean doesn't necessarily mean where you are, whether you're sort of a resident on Zimbabwean soil or not. As long as you carry those traits, as long as you carry those characteristics which are peculiar to Zimbabwe, you still are Zimbabwean. So, as you can probably see, I know you can't see because the evidence is behind me. For me, being Zimbabwean is having things around me that reminds me of Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwean flag, for instance, which is just behind you, that symbolizes us as Zimbabwean. The green, for those who do not know, represents the agriculture. The yellow on the flag represents the minerals. The red on the flag represents the blood that was shed during the Liberation War. The black represents the black people, who obviously constitute the majority of Zimbabwean population. And the white represents the peace and reconciliation after the liberation struggle. So having these things around me, even though I am 8,000 miles from Zimbabwe, for me that suggests Zimbabwe. I mean, you also look at things that I have in here. You can see I've got the artifacts which are peculiar to Zimbabwe. The thumb piano, the mbira. These are things which are Zimbabwean. These are having things around me also constantly reminds me of what it is to be Zimbabwean. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So, what message would you give the young Zimbabweans? Because we have also got a huge community of young Zimbabweans who are growing in England as well.
Yeah, this issue is a very, 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 very touchy subject. Unfortunately, for us Zimbabweans, I should not say for us Zimbabweans, for some Zimbabweans, especially the younger ones, they are led to believe that speaking the Zimbabwean language, the Zimbabwean languages, i.e. Shona and Ndebele, especially in a foreign country, is inferior. My message to these people is that knowing your mother tongue is not at all inferior. If anything, that makes you superior to those that only speak English. What I will say is we need to hold our identity. We need to carry ourselves forward, and our culture should not die purely because we're living in a foreign country. So let's hear a lot of people speaking Ndebele. Let's hear a lot of people teaching their kids to speak Shona. And equally, when we go back, once we've gone back to from the diaspora, going back to Africa, how on earth do we expect, sort of our kids to converse with our grandparents? This is something that we as parents and as custodians of the community, we honestly need to think about. And, because these are the same things which are going to haunt us in a few years to come. When I reminisce, I was privileged enough to have a rural upbringing as well as an urban upbringing. So, and it doesn't, yes, when I was in those environments, having to get up at 5 in the morning to go, to the fields and till the land, at those times I felt that, my friends who were in the city at the time were better off. But when I look back and when I compare myself, I consider myself to be a much rounded person, because I can relate to every part of Zimbabwe. I can relate to the city life. I can also relate to the communal life. So my message to parents, and as I said, to custodians, or even people who just care after the children, we need to ensure that our culture is not lost. Our culture is what makes us. That's what makes us Zimbabweans, and that's my message now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Pamzinda, for affording us this opportunity.
The pleasure is
Nikusie